unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to your live boxing ego unpack. Yeah. We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to your live. Enough is enough. The Gervonta Tank Davis hate train is just about full. In this video, I'm going to break down some of the double standards that I'm seeing when it comes to Mr. Tank Davis. So, yeah, it's going to be a good unpacked. Let's get unpacked. Now, Keyon just fought and became a champion. I watched the card, and to be honest, I almost wish that I didn't, right? The undercard was okay, you know what I mean? Vito Melnicki's fight was pretty good. Abdullah Mason looked really sharp. I like to see that, especially since Mason got dropped 2 times in his last fight, so he shored up some things. The co-main was Xander Zayas. I thought it was a mercy stoppage. But the main event really, really disappointed. Now, I have no problem with Keyon winning. In fact, I predicted Keyon would beat Dennis Baranchenk. Reason being, for me, Dennis Baranchenk, I don't even know how he beat Navarrete, but every so often in the sport of boxing, there'll be a guy that becomes a champion through politics or almost like a fluke win. You know, someone wasn't on their A game, got upset, and these guys become champions, and you could just tell they're not going to be long-standing champions in that division. Dennis Baranchenk is definitely one of those guys for me. And again, I didn't get anything wrong. I knew Keyon was going to win. I've never rated Dennis Baranchenk high. You won't find any clips of Boxing Ego saying that Dennis Baranchenk had a chance here or it was going to be a good fight, because I didn't believe that. So there would be no reason for me to say that. Keyon, the first 2 rounds were pretty ugly. Dennis Baranchenk style, he was trying to do some like a great value version of what Usyk does and create angles. He kept switching stances. Keyon was trying to get a read on him, and it was just weird. Then Keyon went back to his corner after round 2 or 3 or so, and Bomac says, his trainer, "What's up?" And he's like, "This guy ain't got nothing for me." Like, Keyon felt whatever he needed to feel in them early rounds, and he was like, he ain't got nothing for me. Bomac said, "All right, you can open up on him, you know, and close the show." And that's what Keyon did. So, new champion. I can't take anything away from Keyon. It's not his fault that somebody else had the belt and was keeping it warm. It's not his fault that Dennis Baranchenk put up that type of effort. So we give credit where credit's due. However, keep in mind my review of Dennis Baranchenk. Now let's talk about some of the Tank hate, because I know some people are like, "Hey, get to the Tank hate." Sure, no problem. So during this telecast, they had conversations about Tank Davis. Mind you, Tank Davis doesn't fight on ESPN. In fact, top-ranked fighters are not about to fight on ESPN, because I've made a video about it, but ESPN did not renew their contract. So Top Rank is basically going to have to find a new home for their fighters. So why do they keep talking about Tank Davis on these telecasts? DAZN, ESPN. Tank has never fought on your platform. Why are you talking about him, right? How come it's like large pockets of your show, because you have someone in the same division, seem geared around Gervonta Davis, right? I watched PBC. They did David Benavidez and David Morrell fight. It was an awesome fight. I told you it was going to be an awesome fight. It was a banger. Morrell lost, but his stock didn't drop because for having so few fights, he held his own with the Mexican Monster. And Benavidez's stock doesn't drop from that because he won the fight and he looked good. All right, pause. So the point I'm making by bringing up that PBC card is, if you notice, Pitbull Cruz had a very fun fight with Fierro, unlike Dennis Baranchenk versus Keyon. The Pitbull fight was fun. They have Tank Davis on that platform. However, despite Pitbull said he wants a rematch with Tank and Pitbull won, they didn't center the whole conversation around Tank Davis. You know why? Because Pitbull was in there with Fierro, and that was a banger and a great fight. So when you have a great fight on deck, you don't really have to sidebar and talk about somebody else when what you're seeing in front of you is an amazing fight, right? That's what happened with Pitbull. So I'm showing you guys marked key differences between different telecasts. PBC has Tank on the platform, and they don't have to overly talk about Tank throughout the telecast. You know why? Because again, when you got it, you got it. It's like, if you're a billionaire and someone says, hey, you ain't got no money, you just be like, all right, okay, I ain't got no money. Like, you don't have to prove it to nobody. You get what I'm saying? So PBC has Tank. They don't have to overly play that hand. They don't have to overly play that card. That's one thing. Two, as I shown you, ESPN put up this graphic. It says career comparison age 20. And it shows how many wins Tank Davis had when he was 20 versus Abdullah Mason. How many knockouts Tank had versus how many Abdullah Mason has at the same age that Tank was. How many total rounds he has. And the opponent win percentage. Right? Age versus age. And then it says Gervonta Davis won his first title at age 22. You really had your graphic designers and programmers make a motion graphic and cut out Tank's picture, and used a weird picture of Tank, by the way, to compare to Abdullah Mason, your prospect who just got dropped 2 times in his last fight, came back, had a much better performance against Rolly's leftovers, who Tank knocked out Rolly, but whatever. It just seems like a waste of resources. Why are you showing us this? Why? What is, like, back in the day, like on HBO, if they were to do something, they might pull from somebody who's retired from our history. Like, oh, Floyd Mayweather, when he was this age, when he had 19 fights versus Sugar Ray Leonard. You know what I mean? Like, you're not pulling from someone in history. You're pulling someone who's an active fighter in the same division to try to make this point. Now, I like to take my time on these unpacked videos. So let's keep the train rolling. You did the graphic. You felt the need to make this comparison, which begs the question that I'm here to present to you right now. Why? Why? Why are you comparing Abdullah Mason at age 20 to Gervonta Davis? Like, I really don't understand it. They're different people. They're different careers. Then you're having Tim Bradley and Tessitore or whoever, Kriegel, one of them, and they're arguing about Abdullah Mason and Tank and if they're the same. And Tim Bradley was like, yeah, I think Abdullah Mason will say he respects Tank Why you guys keep talking about this man? You're about to get punted off of ESPN and you're making whole segments about a fighter you don't even have. That is extremely weird. But even deeper than that, let's talk about the Tank hate, because I told you I would talk about that. What's even more strange and bizarre is when people mention Tank that are haters, right? The Resistance, the usual suspects, they all have the same talking points that I've seen. They leave it in my comments. I have seen it. I've seen people, make videos on Instagram and Twitter. They're like, oh man, Tank needs to fight somebody. Oh man, Tank, he's 30 years old and he's a prospect. Oh, Tank, he's 30 years old. I mean, which sounds stupid. He's 30 years old, but he's a prospect, but he's a multi-division champion. And somehow you're equating that to being a prospect. But whatever. I'm just going off what the haters are saying. So my point is this. If Tank is as bad as they say he is, 30-year-old prospect, he needs to fight someone. We don't know the guys he's fighting, and all these things that people are saying to throw smut on his name, then why is a network like ESPN that's in however many million homes during their telecast comparing their 20-year-old prospect to Tank when he was 20? Why didn't you use a top-ranked fighter? Like, old media loves Lomachenko. Why didn't you use him and compare a new top-ranked fighter to a veteran top-ranked fighter like Lomachenko? Oh, that's right, because Lomachenko stayed as an amateur and he didn't turn pro till he was like 25, 26. So you don't want to use him, right? But there's so many other fighters that old media has no problem with, right? Tyson Fury. Why not compare him to Tyson Fury or Triple G or whoever else that old media, NOA? They're not doing that. So it makes no effing sense to say Tank needs to fight somebody. When is Tank going to fight somebody? Yada, yada, yada. But then he seems to be the gold standard that everybody talks about. And when a fighter has power, they compare him to Tank. When a fighter is doing well for themselves, like Abdullah Mason, they're comparing him at 20 side by side with Tank Davis. Why would you do that if Tank is as bad as what you guys are saying and his resume is trash? Like, and it's not just the fans and it's not just the media. You have fighters who are perpetuating this. Terrence Crawford's team. You have Keyshawn Davis, who would be like, man, who are these dudes Tank is fighting, right? They all say the same thing. But then I distinctly remember after Pitbull's last fight, a former Tank victim, Keyshawn said, I would love to fight Pitbull Cruz. Huh? These people are telling on themselves. They do not believe what they are saying. If they truly believed what they were saying, it wouldn't sound this crazy and it wouldn't be this inconsistent. Why is Keyshawn calling out Pitbull? They said Ryan was trying to fight Pitbull, Ryan Garcia. Why? Tank already beat him with one hand. Why do you guys want to fight Pitbull now? Then Pitbull already had a fight. He said, I'm not negotiating until I get past Fierro. So Turkey got impatient and said, all right, deuces. Made the call. And now Ryan Garcia is fighting Rolando Rolly Romero. Again, a guy Tank already beat, and this time by knockout. So you have this upcoming May card with Ryan Garcia and Rolly Romero. Two guys that Tank has already beaten by knockout. They're doing a main event in Times Square for free, allegedly. Two guys that Tank has knocked out, and you guys keep recycling the same rhetoric. Tank needs to fight somebody. How is it that these guys are going on and being in big fights? Remember when Pitbull fought Rolly and everybody loved the fight? Again, they fought each other after Tank had already knocked out Rolly and beaten Pitbull Cruz with one hand. So these people are not smart. These Tank haters, they are not slick. They're telling on themselves because it makes no sense. You're saying his resume is bad. His resume is trash, yada, yada, yada. However, you're okay with his leftovers teaming up to fight each other thereafter. So it's not making sense. Then you got people, again, like Keyon, who just became a champion by fighting the weakest champion. Dennis Baranchenk, to me, is not great. He is not like his UK or his Ukraine brothers. He's not a Usyk. He's not a Lomachenko or not even a Vostok. His style looked ugly. He looked slow. Keyon looked mad bigger than him. His punches had no pop. And he beat Navarrete. I think that was Navarrete's first fight in that weight class. And Navarrete moved back down and knocked out Oscar Valdez in the rematch because he probably realized, like, hey, I'm moving up these divisions too much. I'm not really a lightweight. So Dennis Baranchenk's claim to fame is what? Beating a guy who's not even a lightweight. And you guys give all these credit, you give all this credit to everybody else and then say Tank needs to step it up. It's so laughable on so many levels. Like, let's be real, man. This is why I tell you, this is why belts don't matter, because depending on the politics and who you know and your promoter and stuff, you can get a belt. We just seen Keyon effortlessly beat a guy, right? There's nobody that I can think of in the last 5 years that fought a champion as a challenger, never had been a champion before, and their fight wasn't even competitive, and they just easily destroyed in what looked like a mismatch. Name one PBC fight where that was the case. Because I was at some of them, like Caleb Plant, Uzcategui. Caleb Plant did his thing. I was at the fight. He dropped Uzcategui, but it was not a fight like this Dennis Baranchenk where it looked like some guy who was drunk in there and had nothing to offer. Bomac post-fight even said he was trash, right? The guy, the reporter was trying to give credit, like Baranchenk is good and tough, and Bomac said, "Come on, man, he was trash." So don't come at me and say like, "Oh, Ego, you hating." Bomac, the trainer of Keyon, after the fight, there's a video where he called Baranchenk trash. So don't say nothing to me. And again, we got to start listening to who's saying what in boxing and analyzing if it even makes sense. Like, for example, Devin Haney beat George Kambosos. He did beat Teofimo, fair and square. But look at his career, you know. It looks like kind of like a one-hit wonder. He lost to Devin Haney twice, right? And that was like Devin's first fight to become a champion. Then he arguably loses. He definitely should have lost to Maxie Hughes. Then Lomachenko stops him, you know, and now he's like fighting some old Asian dude that I'd never even heard of for his first fight with Top Rank. You know what I mean? So it's like, I want the fans to be serious. People keep saying Tank needs to fight someone, Tank needs to fight. And these other contemporaries, the people they're fighting, Devin fought Ryan Garcia, right? Tank had already knocked him out. So that's a wash. Before that, Devin fought Regis Prograis, right? And he was coming off a very bad performance with Zorilla at home where he got dropped in like one of the early rounds. Then before that, Devin fought Lomachenko. because he had a 3-fight deal with Top Rank. We just seen Tank try to fight Lomachenko, and he said he might retire, and he don't know how he's feeling. It's not Tank's fault. You know what I mean? And then before that is probably George Kambosos for the first 2 fights of the Top Rank deal. Like, honestly, if Tank fought the same Kambosos that Devin fought, what do you think would happen? Because Devin had 24 rounds with them and I don't even think he dropped him. If Tank fought the same Kambosos when he had those unified belts, I would pick Tank by stoppage. Dennis Baranchenk was awkward for 2 rounds versus Keyon until he started figuring out he dropped him with a body shot. If Tank fought Dennis Baranchenk the way he looked versus Keyon, it's not going to be a body shot knockout that looks the same. It's going to be he's probably flatlined and needs a stretcher and a gurney versus Tank. So that's my honest opinion. And again, based on politics, I'm not able to prove that, but I think most people would agree with me. You guys let me know in the comment section. So it's funny because people keep saying, "Oh, Tank, you need to fight someone. Tank, fight someone." But then these other guys are fighting either Tank leftovers, Ryan, Rolly, Pitbull, Rolly. Keyshawn's calling out Pitbull, Tank leftovers, etc., etc. And nobody's criticizing anyone but Tank, right? Keyshawn is like, oh, he's a champion. He looks sharp. He fought Gustavo Lemos, who was coming off a loss to Richardson Hitchens at 140, and then looked like he struggled to make weight because he had to move back down to 135. And this is so impressive to boxing fans, right? And then Dennis Baranchenk, who just fought Navarrete, who's good, but he's not really a lightweight, and that's why he moved back down, as I mentioned earlier. So this, I guess, is Keyshawn's best win, and you guys would give no credit to Tank Davis for beating a Dennis Baranchenk, even if he had a belt. You know what I mean? You'd be like, he still needs to fight a big name. When's he going to fight Shakur? Then, speaking of Shakur, to make matters worse, you got Keyshawn and Shakur that got a built-in excuse, even though they're both champions now, that they're not going to fight each other. Like, come on, bro. So they, as champions in the same weight class, they're friends and boys, and I was with him for a bad time in life or whatever they're talking about, so we don't have to fight each other. But then the fans are going to stage this coup against Gervonta Davis, and now the pressure's on him to fight everybody, right? It's not making any sense, and you know it. Shakur, there's no pressure for him to fight Keyshawn. Keyshawn could fight a guy who we knew wasn't going to last as a champion, Dennis Baranchenk. He could fight a guy off a loss. And you guys are like, oh, I'm sold on it. This makes all the sense in the world. But keep saying, who's Tank fought? When's Tank going to step it up? Oh, my gosh, his resume, right? It just sounds funny because it's like such obvious hate. They're not even trying to mask it. And like I said, when you have situations like the graphic, you got that graphic from Top Rank. Why are you making a graphic comparing Tank to Abdullah Mason? He's not your fighter. You have nothing to do with him, but you're trying to clout chase because the world knows Tank is good and you have this up-and-comer and you want the world to know he's good. So the quickest way and the lazy way to do it is to ride off the coattail of the existing brand, right? Which is Tank Davis, and say, hey, we got a guy who's up and coming in the same weight class. Look where he's at age 20, and look at Tank, what he was doing at age 20. Look at these stats are a little bit higher for Abdullah Mason. And listen, I don't have a problem with Abdullah Mason, but you're making this corny graphic that don't really mean anything. Abdullah Mason is not fighting for a title. They're still developing him. And you're like, oh, he got more knockouts when he was 20. But you know what Tank didn't have at age 20? He wasn't getting dropped by dudes with bald heads and like rat tails, which is what happened to Abdullah Mason twice in the first round. Tank, nobody was dropping. I don't even think anybody dropped Tank ever. So I know they weren't dropping him 2 times in the first round. So boxing media is getting extremely lazy. And like lazy in the fact of just build your own fighter. You don't have to mention somebody else. Like, and this is how you know when you're at top. How many people diss and mention boxing ego in their videos? I don't do that because I don't watch their videos. So whether we agree or have difference of an opinion, I don't know you. I don't want to know you. And I would never know if we agree or disagree because I don't watch you. So if you ever see a video on YouTube and someone's like, oh, boxing ego is wrong and boxing ego is exposed, 99% of the time, I don't even know who that is. So again, when you pop in, people have no choice but to mention you. So it would make more sense if you just give credit where credit's due and say, Tank, he's a beast. Him and Canelo are definitely the face of boxing. Because if they weren't, you wouldn't make graphics like the one that you see on the screen comparing a young Abdullah Mason to that version of Tank. It just makes no sense. So what's bad about boxing is you have people who are such disingenuous people that they'll diss you and slight you and say you're not good and lie to the public only to do things like this and make comparisons. Like even on the ESPN telecast, one of them was kind of hating on Tank. Like, man, I wish you would fight the big fights and stuff like that. Who is fighting the fights that you want in and around his weight class? What are you talking about? Like, you guys got to start really having your own thought process and critical thinking. Like, Shakur is fighting a prospect, Floyd Schofield, who don't have that many fights in a week. Frank Martin is seriously more accomplished when he fought Tank than Floyd Schofield. Schofield has an 18-0 record, and the best name on his record is Renee Euron, who dropped him. So Shakur's fighting him directly off a performance where he was dropped. I can't say too much about the fight because we have to wait and see how the fight plays out and then, judge Shakur based on the outcome. But he's fighting a prospect. Frank Martin had beaten Michelle Rivera, who was a ranked top guy at 135, and he's big and he tested positive for a banned substance thereafter. But the fight was already too late, right? Frank Martin beat Artem Harutyunyan and almost stopped him. And then coming off a loss and long layoff, Shakur fought him. And then Tank knocked him out with 2 punches. So it's like, I get it. People want to hate, but that's how you know when it's hate, because it don't even have, it's almost like racism. Racism is so ignorant, it doesn't have to make sense. If somebody's like, I hate black people because they black, it doesn't even need to have any logical angle. It could just be something dumb. I hate blacks because they breathing white man's air. Like, what? Like, who isn't breathing the same air? Like, you know what I mean? But again, when you're ignorant and you're dumb, you don't have to make sense. You could just say wild, outlandish things. And that's what they're doing to Tank. They're doing the same thing. They're using him as a gauge and a barometer. They keep talking about him. Like, if he's this horrible for boxing, pay him no mind. And then I'm telling you, the game of boxing is so fake. I could talk about this all day. The game of boxing is so fake because you have people who go out of their way to hate on certain people and to create these narratives, and they don't even like. What I could respect is if you were very consistent, like all across the board, you were just calling out anything that met a certain criteria. That's the only way you could get ego to respect you. This is who George Kambosos is fighting, right? Former champion. You guys gave Devin a bunch of credit for being undisputed, and this is who he's fighting. Nobody's saying, hey, you know what I mean? You need to step it up. You're a ranked guy. Why are you fighting this guy? But then they have all these standards for Tank. You see what I'm saying? Shakur Stevenson was literally about to fight a guy coming up in weight off of a knockout loss. And then people were okay with that because Turkey was doing the card and it was with Eddie Hearn. So they have no problem with Shakur moving a guy up off a loss, off a knockout loss, not just like a loss. But Tank fights champions like Hector Luis Garcia, a champion who beat primetime Colbert. That's a better win than anything that Joe Cordina has done, right? Or Lamont Roach. He's moving him up, but it's a champion. He's not coming off a knockout loss, right? And they have an amateur rivalry. And Tank, that's not his original choice. And Lamont Roach is bigger than him. Tank wasn't supposed to fight Roach initially, but the show must go on. And as a result of other people not stepping up to the plate or being available or whatever, this is what was made. But Lamont Roach is listed at 5'7". He's bigger than Tank, even despite being in a lighter weight class. So you guys have all these weird standards for Tank and Tank only. So I had to expose the fraud, the fluke. What's going on in the game don't make sense. Stop talking about Tank if he ain't this and that. How about that? Stop using him for graphics. People don't have a problem clout chasing. And it's like pitiful. Build your own fighters based on their own accolades, their own merits, instead of trying to clout chase and piggyback off of what Tank's doing. Because you guys aren't giving him credit for what he's accomplished. Like, anytime Tank says anything, he say, I'm already making it out of Baltimore and being in this position. I've already won at life. I've already made it. I'm already up there with the Floyds and the Sugar Ray Leonards based on where I come from. And then people want to play games like they don't understand what he's saying. He's saying to be a black man in America from the trenches where I'm from, they don't make it to do anything productive. They end up unalived or in the system, in prison, right? And I'm one of the fortunate ones that stuck to my goals and had people around me. I've already won at life. And then people play dumb like, oh man, how could he say that? Or when he says the game is whack, I might retire after this year or whatever. People blow it out of proportion and play dumb and like, oh man, why would you retire? Your resume, da 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 da. And then again, who is fighting these mythical people that you want to fight? Like Keyon and Shakur said they're not fighting. Facts. They said we're cool, we don't want to fight. So they're not fighting each other. How does that work? So Tank got to fight both of them, but they don't have to fight each other, and they're all champions. Tank tried to fight Lomachenko. I've already went over it. We've seen what happened. Shakur was on the same side with Lomachenko. He couldn't get the fight. Keyon is on the same side as Lomachenko. We'll see if he can get a Lomachenko fight, but to this point, he hasn't been able to get one. So none of those guys can say they fought Lomachenko. Only people that can, that are young, Tio and Devin. But again, Devin was a free agent who had to sign a 3-fight deal with Top Rank. So they had to make a fight for him and do some type of business. And people thought that Devin didn't even beat Lomachenko, a lot of people. So yeah, he fought him, but it's debatable if he won. But again, that existed because of politics. He had a 3-fight deal with Top Rank. Obviously, Tank being who he is, being a cash cow, being with Al Heyman and PBC, he's not going to sign to Top Rank, who is about to lose their contract with ESPN and be under their guidelines and rules. Like he came up under Al Heyman and initially Floyd Mayweather and Mayweather Promotions. Why would he abandon that side and be like, oh, and he's probably under contract on top of that. Devin, his situation permitted him to leave Eddie Hearn and do a 3-fight deal. So he did it. So politics allowed him to get that. But I strongly believe that if for example, why would Top Rank say Devin wants to do a 3-fight deal with us? He wants to fight Kambosos. Lomachenko's not fighting Kambosos because he's staying at home because of the war, right? You know what? Lomachenko's not going to get the Kambosos fight because of the war. Devin wants to sign and he's willing to leave Eddie Hearn to do a 3-fight deal with us. Nah, let's give the Kambosos unified fight to Gervonta Davis, who's a PBC fighter that we have no existing relationship with. Again, politics is why a Top Rank fighter got access to another guy, because George Kambosos did sign, he was with DiBella and he signed a pact with Top Rank as well. So that's why Devin was able to get that and become undisputed, period. Dennis Baranchenk, everyone calls the WBO the Top Rank belt in the industry. So notice Dennis Baranchenk, a Top Rank guy, fought Navarrete, beat him, and then another Top Rank guy, Keyon, got the opportunity. Top Rank doesn't owe anything to Tank, so they're not going to do him any favors and let Tank knock off Dennis Baranchenk and take that belt on PBC and then just keep it pushing. So I'm exposing how the game really works. And it's politics, which is what I've been saying from the beginning. But furthermore, you guys are hating, and the hating is showing, because if Tank ain't all this and he ain't that, then why is everyone talking about him and comparing him? Shouldn't Top Rank, why doesn't Top Rank use Devin Haney and say, hey, Abdullah Mason, this is where he's at age 20, and here's where Devin Haney was at age 20. Or they had Shakur Stevenson when he first turned pro out the Olympics. Show us Abdullah Mason, this graphic, instead of doing it with Tank, who's not even on your network, right? Do a career comparison with Shakur Stevenson or Keyshawn Davis. They're not doing that. They're using Tank. That's embarrassing. To be honest, that's like Coca-Cola filming a commercial and Pepsi came out with a new drink. They got Pepsis all over the desk. Like, what are you doing? You're filming a Super Bowl commercial for Coca-Cola, but you're clout chasing and got these Pepsis on the desk. Clean that up. Take that off. Take that off the desk. We're worried about Coca-Cola, right? So that's what it is when it comes to Tank Davis. You guys are just hating. Just what it is. I've been telling you, people get mad, but they can't prove me wrong. There's no reason to compare Abdullah Mason to Tank. They don't fight alike. They're not the same dimensions. And what does that prove? That's such a reach. Oh, this is, And see, Top Rank be doing some of this gimmick stuff that I'm not for. Like, again, normally it's with an inactive retired fighter. Like they'll say Edgar Berlanga has this many knockouts and Mike Tyson had this many knockouts. But Tank Davis is active and he's so popping that that's the most popping thing that you could compare your young prospect to, that everyone would understand and know. So Tank is the culture. Tank got it lit, and these dudes is hating. Now you guys understand why I've been saying for years that belts don't matter. They watered down the belt. Obviously, Dennis Baranchenko somehow became a champion, but he was not formidable. Listen, mark my words. Oscar Duarte is fighting tonight. Oscar Duarte is solid. In my honest opinion, and you guys can watch his fight later to see what I'm talking about. If Keyon fought Oscar Duarte, that would have been a better fight than Keyon versus Dennis Baranchenko. Dennis Baranchenko looked god-awful. He looked horrible. He looked like he had two left feet. That's the easiest pathway to become a champion. That's a champion where it's like everybody's looking at you like food. So politics is going to be who gets that guy, right? Because this guy has a belt. We know he's not going to be able to hold on to that belt. So depending on who he's aligned with, that determines who's going to get it. They're not going to give Tank that bone. Tank said he don't even care about belts. And this is probably why, because there is a lot of politics in it. So it's like, who cares? I'll be the same way. Pay me. I don't care about no belts. Baranchenko looked horrible, and somehow he was a champion. And this is the same thing. Devin fought Kambosos, and he didn't look good, and he hasn't looked good since, right? So a lot of people are like giving everyone else credit except for Tank. But honestly, if Tank fought Kambosos or Baranchenko, I think it ends even nastier than Devin going 24 rounds with Kambosos or whatever I just seen with Keyon. Keyon was missing wildly in the first 2 rounds and stuff like that. That would be one of Tank's easiest fights. I think Lamont Roach is a better fighter than Dennis Baranchenko, but you guys get sold on like, oh, this guy got a belt, and now Keyon gets the glow up and he gets a lot of props for what? For fighting Dennis Baranchenko? Yes, he's a champion, but all champions are not made equal. You know what I mean? Like, it's like liquor. Some places, when it comes to happy hour, and I don't even drink anymore, but some places for happy hour, they're not giving their expensive stuff. So if they got drinks for like $5, they're going to give you some watered down tequila. They're not going to give you the top shelf stuff imported from Mexico. You know what I mean? That's just the reality of it. So Dennis Baranchenko is happy hour liquor. There's a lot stronger liquors and a lot better liquors out there that will get you tipsy. Just like Keyon beating Baranchenko, he got drunk off a happy hour watered down margarita. That's the equivalent. You see what I'm saying? There's some drinks out there, aka fighters, and they're a lot stronger, literally and also figuratively for my analogy, right? I again, if you fought Dennis Baranchenko and it looked like that, I know for a fact if you fought Oscar Duarte, it would have been a harder fight because he can crack, he's tough. It just would have been a better fight. Keyon looked huge next to Baranchenko, and it didn't look like Baranchenko had any power on his shots at all. You know what I mean? So for me, this is all politics, and Keyon just happened to be aligned with the top rank belt, the WBO belt. So he had access to Dennis Baranchenko. But you guys are like, oh, Tank needs to fight someone. Would you really give, honestly, if Tank knocked out Dennis Baranchenko, which is exactly what would happen, in my opinion, would you honestly be saying, oh, finally he's fought somebody? Honestly, no. You would be like, Baranchek sucks, and I still need to see more. So it's like, stop it with this fake, the fake hate and crying like, oh man, Devin, he was undisputed. Bro, he was undisputed by beating Kambosos. That's the reality of it. If Tank fought Kambosos, then he would have mostly all the belts. You guys are overly praising certain guys and contemporaries like they're so deep in their career, and they done fought Muhammad Ali and Frazier and Ray Mercer and Lennox Lewis. They're not fighting guys like that by and large. But since I'm not gonna say nobody cares, but since they're not as popular, nobody points the finger at them. So yeah, kind of nobody cares. Nobody cares if Shakur fights Joe Cordina because they probably won't even watch it. You know what I mean? So if he continued with that fight, nobody would just not enough people would even know to complain about it. But everything Tank does is front and center in the limelight. So that's my thoughts on it. Why you guys are hating on Tank is beyond me. It looks crazy though, because Keyshawn's not fighting Shakur. Keyshawn did not fight, to me, a top tier guy that really even had a chance to beat him. His own trainer said that. He said he was trash post fight. You know what I mean? So again, all champions aren't made equal. Like Usyk, he's doing stuff like beating Anthony Joshua, a guy who's bigger and proven. Tyson Fury, like Klitschko lost to AJ. Wilder lost to Tyson Fury. So yeah, for a cruiserweight to eventually move to heavyweight, even Usyk's win over Derek Chisora has aged nicely. Chisora is even older, and he just dropped and beat Otto Vailin, and he beat Joe Joyce, who beat Daniel Dubois. So that Usyk win over Chisora, or Dubois is a champion. So again, you look at Usyk and what he's doing at heavyweight, of course it's respected. You guys want me to give equal respect to Keyshawn for beating Dennis Baranchek as if he's doing what Usyk did to become a champion by beating Joshua, or getting past Dubois in title defenses, or beating Tyson Fury to become undisputed. These are not even remotely the same, and you guys are falling for it. Even Canelo's about to fight William Skull to become 2X undisputed. Who is William Skull? So again, yes, Canelo will be undisputed if he beats him, but it's another fight where politics, somehow this guy's ranked, somehow he won a vacant belt. The fans didn't even think he won versus the Shishkin dude, right? But somehow the politics, he won. And now, because Canelo abandoned the Jake Paul deal and went over there with Turkey to sign a 4-fight deal, now they're saying, oh, it's going to be undisputed. Yeah, it will be undisputed, but this is not, all undisputeds are not equal. All champions are not equal. I'm going to keep saying that. William Skull is not the same type of gatekeeper to the one belt of being undisputed as Tyson Fury was to Usyk. Like, Usyk had all these belts and unified the title, and then the one he needed was Tyson Fury's WBC belt and ring belt because he had beaten Wilder, right? So Usyk defeated a 6'9" Tyson Fury to lock up and secure all the titles. Canelo has all the belts, but the one IBF belt that William Skull has that he arguably shouldn't even have. I'm not going to look at that as the same thing. These aren't the same magic tricks. Sorry, but that's what it is. That's why a lot of you sound dumb, because you're hating on Tank for whatever reason, and then your logic is inconsistent at best. You guys are acting like you would give Tank a bunch of credit for fighting like some of the recent weaker champions, which is what Devin did to beat Kambosos to become undisputed, which is now what Keyshawn had to do. And I'm not even faulting Devin or Keyshawn. It's the game. It's the politics. You get in where you fit in. It is what it is. However, the only problem I have is the inconsistency. Like, if you kept it real and said, all right, Devin did kind of fight a weaker champion who was the one-hit wonder from the Teofimo kind of fight, you know what I mean? Dennis Baranchank really wasn't the it guy. It keeps happening throughout boxing. That's how I know. Terrence Crawford, he became a champion at 154 by beating Madrimov. What you guys don't know is Madrimov had the belt for like 3-4 months. He had just became a champion in March through a vacancy that was left by Jermell Charlo. So yes, Terrence Crawford moved up in weight. First fight, fought Madrimov, beat him, and he beat a guy with 11 fights who had just won the belt. That's not a long-standing champion. That is not, to me, it's not the same as Tyson Fury beating Wilder, and Wilder had the same amount of title defenses as like Ali, and he was trying to pass Klitschko. You see what I'm saying? So Wilder kept defending and knocking dudes out. So Tyson Fury, for him to beat Wilder, that was a good statement for his career, and so on and so forth. Errol Spence beat Kell Brook, who was undefeated at welterweight, and he beat him in Sheffield. So that's a different pathway going into Sheffield to beat Kell Brook and stopping him. So that's what Errol Spence. I'm not going to know all this about boxing and then act like Tyson Fury beating Wilder or Errol going to Sheffield to beat Kell Brook by stoppage is the same as Keyshawn stopping Dennis Baranchank, who nobody had heard of a couple fights ago and really was not that good and was undersized and didn't have the style to beat him. These are not one and the same. We unpack.